still working through this first text file here, code for user accounts in our own DB set. So we're down to the point we've finished creating all the views to go along with the controller for the specialized purpose of allowing the currently authenticated user to maintain their own account details. So now we're going to tie it into the the login system, so to speak, right? Couple of assumptions I've mentioned before, but we're going to assume that we only want admin or some specific role to register new users. And we're going to use that full name that we've stored in the cookie to be displayed instead of the email address whenever we can, right? So to help facilitate that, let's go to our login partial, right? So if I bring up Visual Studio again, okay, maybe I'll clean up the screen here, close all, and we'll come down here to the shared, and here's our login partial. Remember, this works inside. It's in that upper right corner, the right-hand end of the nav bar, right? So what we need to do here is notice that we have a number of things injected. So if we want access to something like a sign-in manager, user manager, this is what we do is we can just inject them into this uh, bit of Razor code here, right? So there's one more thing I need in order to get at the cookie. Well, cookies are stored in the cookie cupboard, right? Well, we all know that that is the HTTP context. So earlier on, we had created last term that HTTP context accessor as a service in our startup, right? So we can inject that service basically and have access to the HTTP context right here in our partial view. So, pardon me, now that we have that, I can come down inside here and use it to help me get the username of the current logged in person. So notice I'm in C# code here. Pardon me, there's my @if, right? So I can access that HTTP context accessor, go to the context, request that cookies for username. So if we've already at this point stored the full name of the user in that cookie, then that will get it for us. Of course, if it's null, then we can just use this operator then to say, no, well, instead, we'll just go and get the actual user, right? So this get username will just return the email address, which is fine. That's all we've ever showed up to this point. So we'll just have that as a fallback, so to speak. So now our username variable will have that information. So I'm just going to change the layout. Instead of having two separate links here, I'm going to have a little drop down list. So it's easier for me to just replace this code with my own. Gets you to the same places plus an additional spot. Okay, let me just tab that in. There we go. All right, so I have a drop-down list. So at the top of the drop-down list, it will show the username variable, right? So that will be now the full name of the user if it's stored in the cookie, otherwise the usual email address and menu in the little drop-down, right? And then inside here, we can go to manage our account, right? That functionality was here already. Change security settings. I thought it was a good name for it. And then as well, we can now go to our own manage account, right? If you want, you could say manage account details if you so desire. And that just goes to our employee account controller to the details action, right? So that's the controller in view we were just making. And then here's our little form for logout, right? We have to post, that's why we have an inline form here to go to the logout, and that functionality is still supported just like it was a moment ago. The other thing I would do in here is because we don't want people to be able to self-register, you could comment it out, but I'm just going to actually delete it right out. So we're going to take away that register link. Okay, so now that won't be a temptation. So there we go. That's our changes to our login partial. Just rearrange the menu here a little bit. Basically, though, pulling the uh, cookies value if it's available to get the full name of the user. All right, next. At some point, we've got to be able to navigate to this area, right? At some point, for sure. So I'm going to come in here to the the layout page, our main layout for the whole site where our navigation system is. Now, you might remember from last term that we didn't put a lot of decision structures, ifs here, checking on roles, and hiding links that people weren't supposed to be able to go to. That's the kind of thing you do in a finished product, but we left it all open for testing purposes. So we could click on links and then be told, no, 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 you can't go there, right? Well, at this stage, the only thing that really is here that I'm going to add to is this link to the manage user roles. That's where we can go and an administrator can assign roles to a user, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap that along with one or two other things in order to give access to that link and, excuse me, uh, the ability to register a new user, right? We're going to give both of those to our admin. So unless they're an admin, I'm going to at this point hide that, right? So notice that for the registration, we have to use area for the first time. We go to the area identity, account register, and there we can register users, right? And then the link was already here for managing user roles. Okay. All right. So there are a couple of pages in the identity system that we do need to modify to make this whole thing work together seamlessly. You might remember, I hope you do. I shouldn't keep saying that. Here under identity and pages and an account, right? Remember, I showed you how you can scaffold certain pages, but I think I scaffold, it looks like most of them here. So I have everything I definitely need here. All I really need at this point is log in and register under account. So here's a login. So maybe I'll start there, right? So here's our login page. Now I do want to make some changes both in the HTML side here and in the code behind. One thing we want to do is down here at the bottom under forgot your password, here's where you can click the link to register. Well, remember, we're not going to let people just come and register. So I might as well just delete that right away, right? Take that out. And while we're here, this whole div, this is where we say use another service to log in. So we could, if you configured Facebook, things like that, this is where all that would go. So I'm not doing that right now. It kind of clutters up the screen. And I think it confuses people when they see it and think, oh, am I supposed to be able to do that? Well, no, you're not yet. So let's just comment that out for now. We might end up using some of that down the road. So I'm just going to comment it out at this point. So that just cleans up some of the choices on the login page. The real work we're going to do with this page is in the code behind. So come over here, get the code behind page, the .cs page. Okay, pardon me. And so for this one, what we need to do, we need access to something that's not here right now. See, right now we've got these private read-only. We have a user manager, sign-in manager, even a logger, right? But I need to be able to work with the data in my own DB context. So as you know, that means I have to have the medical office context in here. Well, this is just like adding it to any other controller, basically. I'm going to create a private read-only medical office context, right? Just have to add the using for the data namespace. Okay, my underscore context. Now to actually get it inserted here, we have to come to our bookshelf of things we can choose from to use dependency injection to get it in place. So I'll throw in here my medical office context, and that's how we get it in. We basically say, give me that service too, please. And of course I have to assign it. That's the last step here. Assign it in the constructor. So we grab that medical office context and I store it in my private variable. Okay, so now we're working with it. We have the ability to access anything in our DB sets as well. So if we just go down a little further, two other main things. There's a spot when logging in where we make sure that any old cookies to do with somebody else being logged in are clear for sure, right? So that is found right down here in the onGet async. Here's a spot where, see, it even says in a comment, clear the existing external cookie, right? Well, we're going to clear our own cookie here as well, that one that we've been populating with the user's full name. So I can do that in code quite easily this way, right? Just going to my context, response cookies, delete, right? And that's the name of the cookie. So that will clear it out completely. Okay. Now, the next thing we want to do, down further in the on post async, right? It checks for validity, and then later on, right, we actually attempt to sign in. We get a result back. If results succeeded, Woohoo! All right, then they successfully logged in. So we want to do a few extra things here at this point in time. In the if results succeeded branch of this structure, then basically what we want to do is we want to go and get our account details record, our employee record, right? So this link query will go to from our context, the employees, where the email matches. Of course, that's our wonderful link that we have between the two systems, right? The fact that these emails are both required and unique. So we just find the record where it matches. Now, of course, if they've never completed their account details, their profile, so to speak, then there won't be anything here. So we have to check for null. By the way, I have to add my utilities namespace for my cookie helper. Okay. If it's not equal to null, then we'll just set the cookie right now, right? We had to get the actual employee record with the first and last name so that we could get access to the full name and put it in the cookie, right? But while we're here, that was the main reason really for adding the whole context and the DB, so we get to the DB set and so on, so we could pull out the full name and put in the cookie right away. But while we're here and we have that, it's a great time. What if they haven't completed their profile yet? Wow, we want to nag them until they do, right? So every time they log in, if they've not completed that little form filling out their first name and last name and that, oh, so important favorite ice cream information, then we're going to set the return URL to the employee account create, right? And that way, that's the first thing that will come up after they log in, and every time they log in until they finally do it. Okay. Otherwise, it will just go back to the predefined return URL, which is fine too. Okay, so that's basically it for the login page. Now we do need to make some changes in register because of this business of modifying the whole flow that people don't register themselves. Some admin or perhaps some other user eventually is going to look after that. So let's come down to the register page. Okay, and again, we have some changes to do in both, right? Okay. Um, well, I kind of have it out of order here. So let's go to the code behind first. So basically, okay, once they actually succeed and register, so in the post async, we have something similar, right? We have model state is valid, we have that check, and down here we have result succeeded, right? So if they've successfully, we've created the user and so on and so forth, then there's a bunch of action carried out here. Now let me just quickly talk about it. You see what's going to happen is we're going to generate an email confirmation token. We're going to put together an email to send out to the user, and we actually send that email, and that's their confirmation. So they have to click it within a certain time period to confirm that they actually do have that it's a valid email address. That's largely here for people who are self-registering, right? That's to make sure that they didn't register with a bogus email address. So that's really not our concern at the moment. The other thing is we don't want to do way down here, right? This code will actually then force the user, sorry, force the administrator who's going to call for this action now to get signed out and sign in as the new account they just created. We don't want that either, right? So basically what I'm going to do is everything inside this first result succeeded, okay? Uh, we're going to comment out all of this stuff here. I'm just going to comment that all out now. Later on, you might incorporate some of this in some other logic you're going to do, but we don't really want to do any of that. So I'm going to put the thing that I really do want to do myself because the admin is going to create the new accounts and register new users, right? So I'm just going to make a string here. Okay, success account for, okay, using that email has been created, right? And then we just log that, and then I take my message, I add it to the view bag and return the page. So that way the admin user who's registering, he might have a whole list of 4 or 5 different users he wants to all add at once. Well, he doesn't want to have to click through the menu system and go back to register the next one and the next one. This way it comes right back to the page. We're going to use this message to show that yes, you successfully created this user, but you're sitting right there ready to make a new one, right? And that's I think a reasonably good way to handle the workflow. So we add that view data, our message in, so we can show that at the top of the page. So that's one of the changes we're going to make in the HTML of the register page itself, coming back here, right? Uh, so right near the top, I'm just going to put a fairly good sized message, okay, maybe even above this one. I'll show, okay, the message up there. Give it a class so the color and everything stands out fairly well on the page. And of course, if there is no message, there'll be nothing visible there, right? Just some white space and that's it. And that's fine. That's the only other thing I would do here. It's the same idea we did in the login. Because we aren't using other services, okay, this whole block, this div from there right down to the closing div, I'm going to comment out. We aren't using that at all, so why confuse the user having that up on the screen? And that's it. Okay, let's give it a test. Okay, so we're up and running. So if I log in, of course I have the admin account hard coded in here. So I'll just log in under that. But you see what happened right away, right? At this point, okay, the menu up here just says the name of the logged in user, the email address, really, I should say. And that's fine. So what the system did is it kicked us back to the create, okay, for the employee account. So we're encouraged now. And every time I log in, until I actually do this, this will be the first thing I see. So eventually I'll say, oh, okay, all right, I'll fill this out. The phone number, I could put it in, but it's not required, but if I put in garbage, then of course it will complain. Interesting, I noticed that because there's a length of 10, if you put in more than 10 characters, uh, that's valid, right? But even throwing in an extra digit doesn't cause the regex to complain because it's ignored, right? See, it's just taken away because it's beyond the 10 limit. Okay. My favorite ice cream, of course, I can't, okay, leave that blank. So chocolate is my favorite. There we go. So now I can click create and notice that this will change in a moment, right? I click create. Sorry, you actually have to click the button. I fixed the little letter A there as well. But anyway, so now it comes to the actual details, right? There's the details link. So here we are, Dave Stavel, that's my phone number. Favorite ice cream is chocolate. I'm showing the email address, right? Answer it, but look at that. It's also changed. So now it's in the cookie. So no matter what pages I go to, what I'm doing, okay, it will always get that out of the cookie and away we go, right? Okay. Oh, by the way, there's that other thing we talked about the other day, the ability to add a new item to the drop-down list on the fly. Okay, that was done last term, but there it is again. Now, anytime I want, I can come down here now, change security settings. This was what happened when you clicked on the email before. You'd come to here, right? You can change certain things. You can change your password, two-factor authentication, set that up, and so on. But there's some other configuration you've got to do in the background, but I'll leave that to you. And here's our manage account details. So it takes us to the details page where we do have the option to edit, right? No, that's not my phone number anymore. I don't have a new one yet, so I'll just take it out. And we're allowed to do that because that one's not required. Okay, so there we go. So we have a nice flow. If I log out, right, then we've cleared the cookie. There's no longer a username being stored there. We've logged out of the system and away we go. Oh, one more thing. Let me log back in as admin and just show you this. So if I come down here to register user, right? So now I can register a new account for Fred1 at Outlook, right? Password, and register. Success. Account for Fred1 has been created, right? But I can just carry on now. So if I have Fred2, I can keep on going. Fred2 has been registered. So I can just keep on adding new accounts as the administrator here until I get all the new employees that started this week set up and ready to go. Okay, and I'm giving them some temporary passwords. Of course, once they log in with that temporary password, they could change it to whatever they like. So that's basically it. Just let me bring up in Blackboard, I have some notes at the very bottom of my file here. This is not the end, okay? At the very least, some things to think about. Why not change that registration so the admin doesn't even have to worry about passwords? Think about it. It should be easy for you to do that. Uh, and there was already some code there to send out an email. Well, why don't you send an invitation email, right? Where they can then use that and the forgot password functionality to go in and create their own password from the beginning. That way the administrator never has to even think about it. They'll never know what the user's initial password was because the user creates it themselves. So, I've not taken you right through everything you might want to do. I've given you enough of a skeleton to follow to get the basics in place, but you should always be thinking beyond and think, hey, what else could we do to really improve this system? All right, well, we're going to stop this recording here, but we're not quite done even for this lesson.